Hello, this is Eastern Europe Review, a joint production of BELSAT and TVP World with the reports and analysis from Ukraine, Belarus and Russia. My name is Alexandra Shapalina and these are the main stories. Is Hungary mediating in negotiations between the West and the Kremlin?
For Lukashenko, this is an opportunity to ask for help in easing existing sanctions.
How does Putin boost the careers of his bodyguards?
The main pathway to achieving a high-flying career in Russia is to be close to Vladimir Putin.
Is it possible to avoid mobilization in Ukraine on religious grounds?
Citizens claim that they cannot serve due to their religious beliefs must be supported by evidence.
In a month, Hungary will take over the presidency of the European Union from France. The Belarusian regime wants to capitalize on all opportunities related to this, as Hungary is the only country in the West maintaining political dialogue with Lukashenko.
Considered the only friend in the West, Hungary's Minister of Foreign Affairs and Trade, Péter Szijjártó, has visited Belarus again. He is the only politician in such an office in the European Union who still visits Minsk, and he does so on a regular basis. In 2023, Szijjártó visited Belarus twice.
I do believe that if we cut the channels of communication between the European Union and Belarus, then we lose a very important asset which we could take advantage of in order to make peace.
There was no meeting with Lukashenko on Szijjártó's official agenda. Rather, he held talks with the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Belarus, Serhiy Aleynik.
It's one thing to meet Aleynik, who is a technical figure, and it's another thing to meet Lukashenko, who is a political figure. A meeting with Lukashenko wouldn't be good publicity even for the Hungarian leadership.
There was still room for political statements during Szijjártó's visit to Minsk. Together with his Belarusian counterpart, he stated that since the war in Ukraine cannot be resolved by military means, it's necessary to resume peace negotiations. Belarus and Hungary could assume certain roles in this process. Contrary to the majority of EU members, Hungary opposes supporting Ukraine with weapons.
At the level of the European Union, very important negotiations are currently underway on aid packages for Ukraine and negotiations with Ukraine regarding its accession to the European Union. Meanwhile, Budapest is actively blocking arms delivery schemes paid for from the European Peace Facility Fund. This, of course, greatly infuriates the Europeans.
Budapest has blocked 3 tranches of 500 million euros as well as 50 billion euros from the new aid fund for Ukraine. Earlier, the European Union suspended payments to Hungary from its general budget due to the misuse of part of the funds in the past. The Ukrainian issue, along with the sanctions pressure on Russia and Belarus, have become a bargaining tool between the Hungarian authorities and the European Union leadership.
For Lukashenko, this is an opportunity to ask for help in easing existing sanctions, or as Szijjártó has already promised, not adopting new sanctions. Such decisions in the European Union must be adopted unanimously, so even one country can block the approval of a package of sanctions. Budapest has done this quite successfully in the past.
Hungary has either vetoed decisions or sought the delisting of companies and individuals. For example, last year, thanks to the efforts of the Hungarian and Irish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Santa Braemar company and its owner, a businessman close to Lukashenko, Alexandr Mashensky, escaped sanctions. In Minsk, Péter Szijjártó promised to continue in the same spirit. What does Hungary promise Europe in the context of Belarus?
The Hungarian side can always argue, if something is needed, our contacts in Belarus can be useful. It's entirely possible that such a situation will arise someday and we can act as a mediator.
Hungary might perceive itself as a channel of communication between the civilized world and the dictators in Minsk and Moscow. Just before Siarto's visit, Vladimir Putin came to Minsk. Did Belarus serve as a venue for conveying messages to the sole ally in the European Union? In a month's time, Hungary will assume the presidency of the European Union, becoming responsible, among other things, for developing compromise solutions.
Putin is once again making changes in the top levels of the Russian government. This time, former Tula governor Alexei Dumin has been appointed to a new position. He now serves as Secretary of the State Council. However, Dumin previously served as Putin's bodyguard and even, in scene reminiscent of Russian folklore, saved the president from a real bear.
Politicians often develop special relationships with those who protect them. Putin has developed such a relationship with people from the Russian Federal Security Service. Now, at the beginning of Vladimir Putin's 5th presidential term, 7 of the Russian president's former bodyguards have already been appointed to high positions in federal government services.
The main pathway to achieving a high-flying career in Russia is to be close to Vladimir Putin.
The promotion of bodyguards to senior positions reflects a broader shift in the Kremlin's priorities, from protecting Putin himself to ensuring the longevity of the system he has built. This system lacks mechanisms for staff promotion. In Soviet times, this role was performed by the Communist Party of the USSR and Komsomol. Now, Putin trusts most of all those whom he knows personally. Most often, these are people who are around him every day.
All these people receive important positions, not because of their competence, not because they deserve it, but because they were once Putin's guards.
So who are these people? Head of the Russian Ministry of Emergency Situations is Alexander Kurenkov, who served as Putin's personal aide in 2015. The head of the National Guard of Russia is Viktor Zolotov, who led the Presidential Security Service in 2000 to 2013. Another former employee of the Federal Security Service is Dmitry Stepanenko, who now serves as the deputy head of the Federal Property Management Agency. This year, Valery Pikalev has received a promotion taking control of the Federal Customs Service. Prior to this, he guarded Putin's residence in Valdai. Dmitry Mironov, who protected Putin in 2010, became an assistant to the president. Finally, there is Alexei Dumin, Putin's former aide, and until recently governor of the Tula region. He has come a long way and not only become an assistant to the president, but also the secretary of the State Council.
Putin brought Dumin from the Tula region, where he worked as governor, and appointed him as assistant to the president in charge of the military-industrial complex. So Dumin moved to the federal level and received a key position at that time.
Putin's trust in Dumin did not appear out of the blue. Dumin himself recalls that on one occasion he saved Putin from a real bear.
At first I thought that someone was joking. I went to the door and saw a rather large bear standing in front of me. All the entrance doors were glass. Obviously I was armed, and the president was upstairs, and so the bear and I looked into each other's eyes. He retreated a little. I opened the door and fired the entire clip of the pistol at his feet.
In 2013, Dumin was promoted to a position in the Ministry of Defense, where he commanded special forces and reportedly oversaw the operation to annex Crimea in 2014. He was even associated with the operation to evacuate former Ukrainian President Viktor Yanukovych. In 2016, he became governor of the Tula region, one of the main weapons production centers. At the time, experts described the appointment as if a butler had suddenly become a duke. Now, experts believe that Dyumin is one of the key candidates to replace Putin.
As Putin ages, the question of a successor will inevitably arise. Dyumin is generally recognized as one of the major candidates for succession, and now Dyumin, whom Putin has significantly strengthened, is gaining more and more political influence.
Abbas Galyamov says that his sources refer to Dyumin as the top person among all of Putin's guards. Throughout his career, Dyumin has demonstrated both political and managerial talent, which positions him as someone worth watching in the near future.
How to avoid criminal liability for refusing mobilization based on religious beliefs. The believer must present the evidence to a military recruitment center to avoid being called up. My colleagues investigate whether this provision will create another loophole for draft dodgers and explore Ukrainian perspectives on pacifism overall.
Religion could become a reason for Ukrainians to refuse to take up arms and go to war, following the adoption of a new law on mobilization on the 18th of May 2024. The Supreme Court of Ukraine has decided to clarify how people with religious convictions can prove their inability to serve in the military. It is necessary for them to state the reason for refusing to serve not only verbally, but also in writing. Otherwise, they face criminal liability for evading military service.
A citizen has to prove that he has been expressing and defending his religious beliefs for a long time, which must be confirmed by documentation. This includes participating in the religious organization's events, speeches, and being involved in the public life of the religious group. In other words, a citizen's claim that they cannot serve due to their religious beliefs must be supported by evidence. Testimony from their wife or close friends stating that they are aware of such beliefs is also not sufficient.
There are 10 religious organizations in Ukraine whose statuses prohibit their members from taking up arms or using them as a last resort. Evangelical Baptists, for example, allow both pacifist and militarist views. More than 300 Baptist pastors are now fighting on the front lines.
We differentiate between aggressive wars where we have to defend ourselves and situations where our state initiates an attack on another. So in the case of aggressive wars, when we are under attack, there are people, volunteers, who take up arms. Many people from our churches have gone to the front lines as volunteers during full-scale wars, while some have been conscripted. We uphold the principle that the decision whether to take up arms is a matter of conscience for each Christian who decides how to defend their country.
The Krishnaites are strict about the use of weapons. Their sacred texts speak of the principle of ahimsa, or non-injury. This is the reason why followers of Krishnaism do not kill living beings and are vegetarians. However, it is difficult to explain this at the military recruitment center.
They are forcibly sent to the training ground. They refuse to follow orders, and the military personnel don't know what to do with them. They don't want to fight. So it constitutes a human rights violation. What's more, they don't have anything to eat there because everything is cooked with meat, often prepared with some kind of broth. This situation is paradoxical, a deadlock that benefits no one, neither the state nor the believer. If a person can prove that they belong to an organization, the courts in Ukraine rule in favor of the believer.
Although a military recruit must provide ironclad proof of their sincere and deep faith in God, experts say that abuse of exemption on religious grounds is unavoidable.
They'll say, I believe in God, that's all. I can't hold a gun in my hands. And there'll be many such young people, strong, pumped up and driving Geländewagens, Range Rovers, and they'll say, Hallelujah, I believe in God. And they're going to get out of the army. It's going to happen. And it'll be even more offensive than if they just paid to get out of serving or got themselves disabled.
We asked Kiev residents about their attitudes towards pacifism during Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Even in Kharkiv, we had some of these people who were pacifists at first and then took up arms, because if their families are in danger, they have to fight.
If you can't take up arms, you can peel potatoes and help our people.
It's been less than 2 weeks since the law on military mobilization came into force in Ukraine. During this time, approximately 1.5 million Ukrainians subject to military mobilization have already updated their records in light of the recent law.
That's all for today. Thank you for watching Eastern Europe Review. We will be back next week with our news stories. I'm Alexandra Shapalina. Keep watching TVP World and see you next time.